Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into this truly fascinating illusion that has absolutely captivated real estate investors for decades now. You know the one, right? It sounds like the ultimate, totally foolproof passive income dream. The idea is, you buy this massive shopping mall, you pack it with hundreds of popular brands, and then you just kick back as the rent checks roll in every single month. You just picture millions of shoppers cruising past your storefronts while you sit there collecting the profits. Total passive income on autopilot. Sounds amazing, right? Well, actually, not exactly.
We actually need to shatter that illusion right out of the gate. The economics of owning a shopping mall is, in reality, one of the strangest, most volatile, and highly interconnected traps in all of commercial real estate. Seriously, a mall can look 90% full from the outside while completely bleeding to death on the inside. We are talking about a business where your fate isn't just decided by how many people walk through the doors, but by the absolute smallest print in a dense legal document. If you make just one wrong bet on the neighborhood's trajectory, or if a single obscure ticking time bomb of a contract clause gets triggered, poof, your $100 million empire can literally turn into a pile of rubble in less than 20 years.
So let's jump right into Section 1, the class divide and the billion-dollar bet.
Now, before you even think about buying a mall, you really have to understand that this industry operates on a remarkably strict tier system. Not all malls are created equal, not even close. On one side, you've got what the pros call Class A malls, and these things are true financial fortresses. They're usually planted right near wealthy suburbs, they're packed with high-end luxury brands, they boast massive sales per square foot, and they literally have a wait list of stores begging to get in. Because their income is so incredibly predictable, these properties will routinely trade for north of $1 billion. But if you take a step or two down the ladder to a Class C mall, you are walking straight into a terrifying financial minefield. We're talking older buildings, much weaker brands, and struggling neighborhoods. The contrast is just wild. At a Class A mall, people are literally waiting in line to buy an exclusive luxury bag. At a Class C mall, the main attraction might be a boarded-up food court and just a lingering sense of despair. The volatility here is off the charts.
To really put the stakes of this divide into perspective, let's look at a real-world case study. This is the infamous Rolling Acres Mall out in Akron, Ohio. In its absolute prime, this retail powerhouse was valued at a staggering $33 million. It was an absolute titan of local commerce, a bustling hub where literally everyone in town spent their weekends and their paychecks. But fast forward just a few decades, and that astronomical valuation completely collapsed. It ended up selling for less than $2 million. No way, right? Why did that happen? Well, it's because the surrounding neighborhood shifted. Retail thrives or dies entirely based on local incomes, housing developments, and changing traffic patterns. When the local jobs left and the nearby highway traffic got rerouted, the shoppers just vanished right along with them. So the big takeaway here is this. When you buy a mall, you aren't just buying bricks and mortar. You're placing a massive, high-stakes bet on the surrounding square mileage remaining wealthy and mobile.
Which perfectly sets up Section 2, the 4 invisible streams of income.
Let's transition into how these massive structures actually print cash. If you do actually manage to secure a strong mall, it operates as this brilliantly complex, multi-layered revenue machine that keeps the lights on from 4 completely distinct directions. We've got base rent, percentage rent, CAM, which is common area maintenance, and non-store revenue. Having a clear mental map of this ecosystem is absolutely vital if you want to understand the delicate balance of this whole business. So let's break these down one by one.
First up is base rent. This is your standard, fixed monthly fee per square foot. But here is the massive paradox of the mall world. The giant department stores sitting at the far ends of the mall, the anchors, your Macy's or JCPenney, they historically paid practically nothing. Massive companies like Sears used to pay around $5 per square foot for their gigantic footprints. Just $5. That is an absurdly cheap deal for tens of thousands of square feet of prime commercial real estate.
Now, contrast that totally absurd $5 deal with the massive fees paid by the tiny little clothing shop right next door. That smaller store might be paying $60 per square foot. So why on earth would a mall owner structure things this way? Well, it's because the owner isn't actually renting physical space to the anchor store. What they're really renting is the sheer volume of foot traffic that the giant anchor brings into the building. Every single small store is quietly subsidizing the giant's discount. Basically, that tiny, amazing-smelling pretzel stand in the middle of the hallway is practically funding the massive department store's very existence.
The second vital stream is percentage rent. This one's super interesting. If a store is highly successful and hits a specific sales milestone, which is known in the biz as the breakpoint, the mall owner automatically takes a 6 to 7% cut of all the extra revenue above that line. It aligns the incentives perfectly. If you succeed, the mall succeeds.
Third is CAM, where the mall basically takes core building expenses, stuff like security guards, elevator maintenance, sweeping up the food court, and passes those costs straight back to the tenants proportionally. And finally, we have non-store revenue. This is your digital advertising, parking fees, and those little kiosks sitting in the walkways. Honestly, per square foot, a tiny sunglass cart sitting right at a busy intersection can actually be the most profitable real estate in the entire building. Position matters way more than space.
Moving right along to Section 3, the secret architecture of manipulation. Now, of course, absolutely none of this financial ecosystem happens by accident. Let's look at the psychological design of the mall itself. The whole shape of the modern mall was perfectly engineered by a legendary developer named Alfred Taubman. He had this core philosophy that drove every single blueprint he ever drew up. He realized that if you can force human movement, you maximize visual exposure. And as he famously put it, exposure equals sales. Taubman used some really specific, almost sneaky architectural tricks to pull off this master plan. He would deliberately place those giant anchor stores roughly 3 city blocks apart, essentially forcing you to walk past dozens of tempting specialty shops just to get from one major department store to the other. He shoved the escalators and elevators all the way to the absolute ends of the hallways so you couldn't take any easy shortcuts. He even engineered the skylights so they blended perfectly with the artificial lighting, making it entirely impossible for your brain to tell how much daylight had actually passed. Much like a Las Vegas casino, the modern mall is a psychological maze designed specifically to make you lose all track of time, forget whether it's 2 p.m. or midnight, and look at as many storefronts as humanly possible.
But there's a dark side to all this, which brings us to Section 4, the death spiral and the co-tenancy trap. See this brilliant, completely interconnected psychological design? It is also the mall's absolute fatal flaw. Because a mall is a single, breathing ecosystem, it doesn't fail gradually. It fails because one single piece drops out, completely pulling the floor out from under everyone else. Enter the ultimate legal trapdoor, the co-tenancy clause. Buried deep in the leases of those small specialty stores is this rule, which allows them to legally slash their rent or break their leases entirely if a major anchor store closes. When the retail landscape shifted drastically back in the 2010s and huge anchor stores like Sears started filing for bankruptcy left and right, this hidden little clause triggered a catastrophic domino effect. Let's walk through the terrifying math of this death spiral because it happens fast. Step 1. An anchor store's doors close for good. Step 2. Suddenly, dozens of smaller shops nearby invoke their co-tenancy clause and legally just stop paying their full rent. Step 3. The massive fixed operational costs, all those CAM expenses for utilities, property taxes, and security we talked about, well, they don't magically shrink just because the mall is emptying out. Instead, those massive bills get divided among the fewer remaining tenants who are still paying. Step 4. Your most loyal stores suddenly see their monthly bills skyrocket just as their foot traffic plummets, practically forcing them to pack up and leave too. This incredibly rapid domino effect is exactly what took Rolling Acres Mall from 98% occupied to a completely hollowed-out concrete ghost town, stripped of its copper wire by vandals and left to rot in the rain, in under 20 years.
Which leads us to our final act, Section 5, the Great Pivot. So where does all of this leave the industry today? We are definitely witnessing a massive modern reckoning, and the surviving malls are desperately trying to figure out how to save themselves from the wrecking ball. Based on everything we've just covered, I want to pose this direct question to you. Is owning a shopping mall even a viable business today?
The answer honestly depends entirely on what you are trying to sell, and there is absolutely a bright future if you get this next part right. See, for decades, malls sold convenience, but the internet completely monopolized convenience. You can compare 100 pairs of shoes from your couch right now without ever fighting for a parking spot. So, the modern malls that are actually surviving and thriving have completely pivoted. They no longer sell products, they sell experiences. They're selling compelling reasons to physically get up and leave your house. They are aggressively tearing down those old bankrupt department stores and replacing them with vibrant fine dining spots, massive luxury fitness centers, medical urgent care clinics, modern co-working spaces, and even upscale apartments built right into the old mall wings. They aren't just shopping centers anymore, they are rebuilding mini-cities.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for today. The building itself, it just isn't the business anymore. The people walking through it are. And in the modern economy, the ultimate question for any retail fortress is simply this: can your space offer an experience that a computer screen cannot replicate? Because if the answer is no, your empire is just on a countdown to a date with the demolition crew. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.